This is Radio 4.
BBC News at midnight. This is Rory Morrison. London and Dublin appear ready to set up an international commission on removing terrorist weapons. John Major and John Bruton will meet next week. The Bosnian Serbs have been the target of NATO air attacks for a second day. President Clinton has told them they have everything to lose. 5 European Union monitors, thought to have died in yesterday's raids, now appear to have survived. The insurance company Sun Life has lost a legal battle over the amount of compensation it has to pay to investors who were given bad financial advice. The government has cleared the way for the takeover of 3 electricity companies. It won't refer the bids to the Monopolies Commission. And the new housing estate that can boast no parking problems. Cars are banned. As the IRA ceasefire enters its second year, there are signs that the faltering peace process may be about to regain momentum. London and Dublin have confirmed that a summit meeting between John Major and the Taoiseach, John Bruton, will take place next Wednesday at Chequers. The IRA laid down their guns at the stroke of midnight a year ago. 6 weeks later, the Loyalists followed suit. But, to the frustration of Sinn Féin, there have still been no all-party talks on the future of the province. The main stumbling block has been the decommissioning of terrorists' weapons. However, after intensive discussions over the past few days, the British and Irish governments appear confident that they've made enough progress on the issue to warrant the summit. Our first report is from Gary Duffy in Belfast.
What do we want? Peace talks. When do we want it? Now. What do we want?
A year after the IRA ceasefire, and Sinn Féin supporters were out on the streets of West Belfast today, demanding a place in all-party talks. The deadlock over IRA arms has so far prevented this, but next week's Chequers summit could provide an opportunity for progress. The two governments seem close to agreement on an international commission to deal with the issue, with the former Senator George Mitchell, who's President Clinton's special envoy to Ireland, suggested as a possible chairman. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Sir Patrick Mayhew, saw this as a hopeful development, and he insisted today the government has been flexible.
All the flexibility since August the 31st last year has come from the government. We've taken troops off the streets. We've shown a willingness now to relax the remission rules, a willingness to bring forward an immediate review of the emergency legislation. Ministers have been talking with Sinn Féin, with Mr. Adams and Mr. McGuinness. All the flexibility has come from us.
But for the Sinn Féin President, Gerry Adams, the optimism of last year's IRA announcement has been replaced by frustration and anger. And while Sinn Féin says it will study any proposal for a commission, Mr. Adams was openly dismissive of the idea.
I think that Patrick Mayhew last Friday scuppered whatever merit there was in the idea of an international commission. And I think Michael Ancram did the same thing on Monday last, when they clearly pointed out that the British government sees the international commission as a device to deliver an IRA surrender.
Loyalist politicians, however, have welcomed the commission idea, while the Ulster Unionist MP, Ken McGuinness, said it would allow the IRA to give up arms while avoiding the impression they were surrendering to Britain. But the Democratic Unionist leader, Ian Paisley, was not impressed.
Traditional Unionists have always resisted internationalising the Ulster situation. It has been internationalised now so much that the Dublin government thinks as of right it's in here.
Despite these disagreements, most people here would acknowledge that what had gone before was much worse. A neon sign in Belfast city centre today carried the names of more than 3,000 dead, serving as a tragic reminder of 25 years of violence. And at St Anne's Cathedral in Belfast, where so many pleas were made for an end to violence, the prayers today reflected the hope that whatever the difficulties, nothing should threaten the peace.
In Dublin, Mr. Bruton described the IRA ceasefire announcement a year ago as a huge gesture. But he said the IRA had to recognise that 12 months was a short time for those who'd been on the receiving end of violence to accept its word, and that of Sinn Féin, that they were truly committed to the peace process. Chris West in Dublin reports on the Irish government's hopes for next week's summit and beyond.
There's relief in Dublin that sufficient progress has been made to allow the summit to take place. The Irish government is guardedly optimistic that details can be announced of a formula to break the deadlock. The Prime Minister, John Bruton, said he and John Major were working towards doing so. We may or may not get there, he added. In a BBC interview, the Taoiseach looked forward to all-party talks soon, but they should be talks which work, he said, and that would require an effort by everyone involved. The handing over of weapons was only part of the equation.
What we're really concerned about is getting a political commitment never to use, to threaten, or to imply a threat of the use of violence at any stage in the future for political purposes.
Mr. Bruton expressed the hope that in 12 months' time, what he called intensive all-party talks would be underway, and the participants would be preparing to present a package to the people of Northern Ireland and those of the Republic, which each would find acceptable. Sinn Féin supporters in Dublin demonstrated their sense of frustration at what they see as a lack of progress by climbing into the grounds of the British Embassy. They were removed by police after a brief protest.
Our Ireland correspondent, Mark Devonport, now assesses the prospects for a lasting peace settlement.
At times, amidst the talk of log jams and crises, it's tempting to think that in Northern Ireland nothing has changed. In fact, as the seemingly endless list of victims displayed on an electronic screen in Belfast today proved once again, on the ground, nothing short of a miracle has been achieved. The once unthinkable end to the bombings and the shootings. That said, with the paramilitary organisation still intact, the peace will remain fragile until there's a comprehensive political settlement. Sinn Féin supporters are feeling frustrated that talks haven't yet begun. They'll no doubt voice those doubts to the party leadership at a special conference scheduled to take place in a month's time. The weapons issue remains a crucial stumbling block, but expect to see some clever diplomatic wordplay alongside the launch of the new International Commission to deal with it. Any imminent return to the gun by the IRA can be ruled out. In the short term, Republicans will be on their best behaviour, at least until President Clinton's visit to Northern Ireland at the end of November. In the longer term, the best hope for the continuing peace is that both the government and Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness have invested too much in it to see it fail.
3 inmates at Ireland's top security Portlaoise prison have ended their 3-week hunger strike. The members of the Irish National Liberation Army terrorist group had been protesting at what they claimed was preferential treatment for IRA members. NATO warplanes have been in action again over Bosnia, hitting Serb targets for a second day running. The new strikes came as officials and politicians from the NATO powers spelt out a wider objective of the action to deter further Bosnian Serb attacks on designated safe areas. They've said the threat of heavy weapons bombarding Sarajevo must not only be removed, Bosnian Serbs must also allow free access to the city. This report from our correspondent in Sarajevo, Martin Dawes.
NATO won't say at what time their warplanes struck, but I understand it was around lunchtime. Significantly, that was about when low cloud lifted, giving better visibility. Bosnian Serb radio has reported that jets hit targets near 2 villages in the Ozren mountain area in northern Bosnia, and that there were civilian casualties. As darkness fell, increased air activity became obvious in the skies over Sarajevo. UN sources say that the campaign is likely to continue into the night. It had been an extremely quiet day in Sarajevo. The weather has undoubtedly been a problem for the pilots, and after the large-scale strikes, it's thought that it may have become more difficult to find targets such as gun positions. Obviously, the Bosnian Serbs will have moved anything they can under cover or into built-up areas. It's understood that the Bosnian Serb commander, General Ratko Mladic, has been seeking a meeting with the commander of the United Nations forces, General Janvier. It's not clear if that has been arranged. In a letter sent to General Mladic, the UN commander demanded, amongst other things, the withdrawal of heavy guns from around Sarajevo, in effect re-establishing a weapons exclusion zone. NATO's commander in southern Europe, Admiral Leighton Smith, has said that the length of the air campaign was in the hands of the Bosnian Serbs.
President Clinton has said the NATO bombing campaign is the right response to the Bosnian Serbs' savagery in Sarajevo. Mr. Clinton, who was speaking in Hawaii, where he's attending 50th anniversary ceremonies to mark the end of the Second World War, said the conflict in Bosnia had to end at the negotiating table. From Honolulu, Gavin Esler.
President Clinton said that as he prepared for the celebrations on the anniversary of VJ Day, America's thoughts and prayers were with those engaged in today's conflict, U.S. air crews flying over Bosnia. He condemned what he called the massacre of civilians in Sarajevo as an outrageous act in a terrible war, and said the NATO bombing campaign was justified, delivering loud and clear a message to the Bosnian Serbs.
The NATO bombing campaign and the related artillery campaign against the Bosnian Serb military, in which our forces are taking part skillfully, is the right response to the savagery in Sarajevo. The campaign will make clear to the Bosnian Serbs that they have nothing to gain and everything to lose.
Mr. Clinton was propelled to take a greater interest in the Balkans following criticism from both political parties in Congress of his lack of leadership. He now took credit for the United States' more vigorous role. The war in Bosnia must end not on the battlefield, he declared, but at the diplomatic table. And he said he was proud both of U.S. military action and of American diplomatic efforts to end the conflict.
Unconfirmed reports from the Bosnian Serbs say that the 5 European Union monitors who were reported killed in yesterday's air raids are alive. The Serbs claim they've now left their territory, although there's been no word from them. From Belgrade, Paul Woods.
Parlay TV showed the 5 monitors apparently relaxed and in the company of Bosnian Serb officials. The report said the pictures were taken today, and that the 5 monitors have now left Bosnian Serb territory. The Bosnian Serb press agency said the Parlay authorities had conclusively denied reports that the monitors were among the casualties of the NATO airstrikes. And following speculation that they'd been detained against their will, the Bosnian Serb information chief, Miroslav Tokoj, said they'd been placed in protective custody because people were very angry after the airstrikes. A spokesman for the European Community Monitoring Mission based in Zagreb said, however, that they were still trying to confirm if the monitors were in fact still alive.
NATO forces have been searching for the 2 French airmen whose Mirage plane was shot down by the Bosnian Serbs yesterday. The French authorities have said the 2 men weren't captured and had made contact with them. The first of the NATO airstrikes were combined with bombardments of Bosnian Serb positions by artillery of the UN Rapid Reaction Force on Mount Igman overlooking Sarajevo. Our correspondent, Malcolm Brabant, has been to Mount Igman and sent this report.
After reverberating to the sound of outgoing artillery yesterday, the gun pits of the Rapid Reaction Force were eerily quiet throughout the day. The British, French and Dutch crews used the period of calm to clean and prepare their weapons for the next onslaught. Asked whether the silence meant that the NATO operation was all over, the Rapid Reaction Force commander, General Andres Subaru, replied, "It is only just starting." The general said he was satisfied that his heavy guns had inflicted serious damage on Serb installations surrounding Sarajevo yesterday. In all, his men fired 1,000 shells at 30 targets, including ammunition dumps, artillery pieces, bunkers and tanks. The acting gunnery commander is Major Simon Worsley.
We've shown the Serbs that we can engage targets throughout the environs of Sarajevo. I think there are 2 schools of thought in this. Either the Serbs are now thinking and planning for a counter-strike, which we're prepared for, or they're thinking about moving out of the total exclusion zone.
So far, the Rapid Reaction Force has not encountered much resistance from the Serbs. But one officer said the danger period for the UN gunners will come in the next 2 or 3 days, once the Serbs have calculated where they are. However, the commanders and men are confident that their bunkers and hidden positions will protect them from anything other than a direct hit.
The last group of Royal Welsh Fusiliers, who endured 6 months of sniping and shell fire in the eastern Bosnian enclave of Gorizda, have returned to Britain. During their tour of duty, the Fusiliers came under attack from the Bosnian Serbs and thwarted an attempt by Bosnian army soldiers to seize their weapons. At a news conference at RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire, their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Riley, described how they'd pulled out from Gorizda in darkness on Monday.
The window of opportunity had to be jumped through before it shut forever. And that necessitated a pretty rapid move out in a tactical march column through a minefield at high speed before either side really could catch their breath and know what was going on. And we made it in a runner to the Serbian frontier. And I can't tell you what it felt like to cross that frontier.
The insurance company Sun Life has lost a legal challenge at the High Court in London over the amount of compensation it has to pay to investors who were given bad financial advice. Sun Life wanted to reduce its payments to a central fund arguing that it shouldn't have to pay for the liabilities of companies that no longer exist. Ros Bew was in court.
The big insurance company Sun Life had challenged the Personal Investment Authority's right to raise money for its investors' compensation scheme. The insurance company's case was that because many of the financial advisors who gave bad advice in the past went out of business before the PIA had been set up just a year ago, the compensation scheme didn't apply to the policies they had sold. The investors' compensation scheme was set up as a safety net to take care of claimants where the advisor has gone out of business. Outside the High Court, Stuart Willey of the PIA welcomed the judgment.
It's very welcome for investors. It should speed up the process of ensuring that the investors' compensation scheme is properly funded and that claims are met.
As the financial services industry has tightened its regulations, more cases of mis-selling, especially personal pensions, have come to light, and the industry has become increasingly worried by the mounting compensation bill. Mis-selling of pensions alone could, it's estimated, cost the industry £3 billion. Many life companies have already set aside hundreds of millions to meet claims from their own policyholders, on top of their annual contributions to the investors' compensation scheme. Although today's ruling was good news for investors, Sun Life has been given 14 days to appeal.
The government has cleared the way for the takeover of 3 regional electricity companies by announcing that it won't refer the bids to the Monopolies Commission. The Industry Secretary, Ian Lang, said he was satisfied with assurances he'd received. The American Southern Group has made an agreed bid for Southwestern Electricity, Hanson has made an agreed bid for Eastern, and Scottish Power has launched a hostile bid for Manweb. Mr. Lang's decision has been criticised by Labour, the unions and consumer groups. Here's our industry correspondent, Stephen Evans.
The decision is important because it spells out the guidelines for taking over electricity companies, telling potential predators what is and what isn't acceptable. Though Mr. Lang recognised public concern where foreign firms bought British ones, he said the prime criterion would be whether a takeover would diminish competition. There also had to be assurances that funds from electricity companies didn't get siphoned off into the parent company's coffers. Mr. Lang overruled the industry watchdog in one case, that of Scottish Power's bid for Manweb, where the regulator felt that 2 British companies merging would diminish competition. Scottish Power generates electricity while the reluctant object of its attention sells it, so potentially there could be a significant increase in market clout if the bid succeeded. Mr. Lang rejected that argument, saying assurances Scottish Power had given were sufficient. In the city, share prices for electricity companies shot up, indicating a belief that more bids for other companies may be on the way, possibly from the other side of the Atlantic.
A 10-year-old boy has appeared before a youth court in Leeds, charged with the manslaughter of a 74-year-old woman. Edna Condi died after she was hit on the head by a slab of concrete as she walked past an 11-storey block of flats. The boy, who can't be named for legal reasons, was accompanied by his mother, who held his hand throughout the hearing. He spoke only once, to say yes. When asked if he understood, he'd be remanded into the care of the local authority and would have to appear in court in a week's time. A group of New Age travellers has won a legal challenge after a local council tried to evict them from a site in East Sussex. A High Court judge ruled that Wealden Council had overstepped its new powers under the Criminal Justice Act of 1994. The judge, Mr. Justice Sedley, described the act as draconian in parts. Orla Gearin reports.
The travellers who occupy land at Crowborough in East Sussex have beaten Wealden Council in a test case with wide-ranging implications. According to their solicitor, Stephen Cragg, councils can no longer treat the Criminal Justice Act as a charter for clearing land.
If the councils want to evict travellers on sites, what they have to do is make a lot of investigations, especially about children and people who might be ill, before they decide to make directions to evict people, rather than deciding to evict people, first of all, because, for instance, there's been complaints, and then rushing off to the magistrates' court.
Mr. Justice Sedley ruled today that councils must make proper inquiries about the humanitarian needs of travellers before seeking to evict them, and removal orders can now only be applied to travellers present when the orders are obtained, not to others who come later. But the court rejected an application from travellers in Lincolnshire to quash an order for their removal. While criticising the council for erring in law, the judge allowed the order to stand. The solicitor for the travellers, Michael McColgan, says the fight will go on.
They say they're going to attempt to evict them at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Of course, they have a schedule of vehicles, and it's only people with those vehicles that they can evict. If there are any other vehicles, any other people on land, they will not be empowered to evict them, and I shall be on site to make sure they do. and if they attempt to remove any people they haven't got authority to remove, then we should be back in the High Court before they can say Jack Robinson.
But Lincolnshire County Council said this evening they were not going to rush into attempts to clear the travellers and would take due care to determine the needs of the group, one of whom is heavily pregnant.
Hospital radiographers have voted in favour of strike action over local pay deals. The announcement came a day after the news that NHS therapists had overwhelmingly backed industrial action. The government has invited the health unions to talks in an effort to resolve the dispute. Here's our social affairs correspondent, Richard Hannaford.
The Society of Radiographers asked its 13,000 members whether they'd be prepared to take strike action in opposition to local pay. Of the 9,000 who took part, 3/4 voted yes. The Society will now identify a number of days next month when its members will be asked to perform emergency duty only. Radiographers not only handle X-rays but also provide radiotherapy for cancer patients. Their action will have an immediate impact on the service. Yesterday, physiotherapists, dietitians, chiropodists and eye specialists, in their ballot on local pay, voted overwhelmingly in favour of taking industrial action, like refusing to work unpaid overtime or fill out certain paperwork. More ballot results are expected next week, including the ballot by Unison, which also includes a question on strike action.
The Scottish Secretary, Michael Forsyth, has announced there's to be random compulsory drug testing in Scottish jails. He was speaking after the annual report of the Chief Inspector of Prisons for Scotland indicated that more than 3/4 of inmates admitted using drugs. James Shaw reports.
Mr Forsyth told a news conference at Shotts Prison in Lanarkshire he wanted to send out a clear message that drug abuse in Scottish jails wouldn't be tolerated, although he commented that users also needed help to recover from their addictions. The annual report of the Chief Inspector of Prisons in Scotland, Clive Fairweather, warned that drug use had reached unacceptable levels and there was a need for more resources sooner rather than later. Elsewhere, he highlighted a threefold increase in suicides and pointed to overcrowding and boredom as serious problems. He also questioned the use of prison sentences to deal with lesser offenders. Random compulsory drug tests will be introduced under the provisions of the Criminal Justice Act. 8 pilot projects have been running at prisons in England and Wales since last February. Their success is being gauged at the moment. Mr Forsyth was the Home Office Prisons Minister at the time of their introduction.
LSD with a street value of £5 million has been seized by police from a North London flat. Drug squad officers arrested a woman and 2 men. Federal law officers in Chicago have arrested 39 alleged leaders and hitmen of one of the most feared street gangs in the United States. Those detained have been charged with a 25-year conspiracy to distribute drugs and extort protection money from street corner dealers. More details from our correspondent, Brian Barron.
About 250 law officers carried out a wave of arrests of the alleged hierarchy of the Gangster Disciples, a criminal group believed to control much of the drugs, prostitution and illegal gambling in Chicago's often troubled South Side district. Federal Attorney James Byrne said the arrests and indictment should severely cripple the gang. He added, "For more than 2 decades, this gang has terrorized entire communities, preying on young people in particular. The reputed leader of the gang, named as Larry Hoover, is already in jail, serving a sentence of 150 years to 200 years for a 1973 murder. Hoover allegedly continued to direct the Gangster Disciples from his cell. Police reckon the Gangster Disciples have as many as 10,000 hardcore members. Past efforts to curb the gang have been unsuccessful."
The West Midlands economy has received a major fillip with the announcement that 8,000 jobs are to be created following the disclosure that a new partner for Birmingham's International Airport has been found. After months of speculation, the 7 councils which run the airport have chosen the Irish operator Air Rianta as the main private investor. As our Midlands correspondent, Bob Sinkinson, explains, the decision means expansion plans for the airport can now get underway.
5 million passengers passed through Birmingham International last year, enabling it to nearly double its profits. Government restrictions on public borrowing meant the 7 local authorities that owned the airport had to sell shares and take on board a private investor to help finance expansion plans. The choice of Air Rianta, which has international experience in airport management, will pave the way for a £400 million improvement plan. The 2 existing terminals will be doubled in size, and there are proposals to extend the runway. Up to 8,000 jobs will be created. Airport manager Brian Summers says Birmingham International must grow to match the area's expanding economy.
It is vital. This region needs to be competitive, needs to be attractive, and to meet those two objectives, it must have good air service links.
Today's news is the second boost for the region this summer. In July, Jaguar announced it's to spend £500 million in the West Midlands following its decision to build a new car in Birmingham.
In the city, the 100 share index closed down 26 points at 34.78. The pound rose half a cent against the dollar to $1.55 and fell a third of a pfennig against the German mark to 2 marks 28. In New York, the Dow Jones index was down 6 points at 46.11. The film star Elizabeth Taylor and her seventh husband, Larry Fortensky, have agreed to a trial separation after 4 years of marriage. Both have said they hope the split will be temporary. Villagers living next to a mountain are hoping their local authority will apply for national lottery money to buy it. Most of Moel Vindig Mountain in Clwyd is owned by a mining firm. Local people fear the beauty spot will be devastated if plans for a sandstone quarry go ahead. Tim Hartley reports.
Standing in an area of outstanding natural beauty, the mountain of Moel Vindig near Mold has long been a favourite walkway with ramblers. But planning permission has been granted to the owners to quarry sandstone there. As a last resort, the community wants money from the National Lottery to buy Moel Vindig for themselves and save it from the bulldozers. Alan Clinton is chairman of the Maes Havan Rural Association.
It would be vandalism to destroy such a beautiful spot. I mean, there's wildlife and there's lots of people use it. And, of course, the hazards that would be caused by the traffic. If it was quarried, they'd be coming up very narrow lanes, and people who live directly by the access to where they want to go in, it'd just be horrendous for them.
It's understood that quarrying at the site could prove expensive, and Alan Clinton says the owners of Moel Vindig would be happy to sell the mountain if the price is right.
And now a look at some of the early editions of the papers. The continuing NATO attacks on Bosnian Serb targets are the main subject of the Times lead item. The paper says there are indications that the Serbs have begun withdrawing from their positions as a result of the bombing and artillery attacks. The Financial Times says there are signs of a broadening in the aims of the bombing campaign to include a complete end to the Serb siege of Sarajevo. The Today newspaper says conditions in many hospitals' children's wards have not improved since the murders by the former nurse Beverly Allett. The paper comments that in spite of assurances by the then Health Secretary Virginia Bottomley, wards are still understaffed and unable to provide the protection which would prevent a repetition of the crimes. Senior charity officials are angry that the National Gallery is asking for £100 million of national lottery money to buy 7 paintings, according to The Sun. Elsa Davis of the National Playing Fields Association is quoted as saying that her bid for £150,000, a fraction of the National Gallery's request, was turned down. Councillors in Edinburgh have approved a site for Britain's first car-free housing development. The scheme would provide rented accommodation for people who agreed not to own a car while they live there. Backers of the idea say residents will benefit from cleaner air and reduced accident rates. Here's our Scottish Affairs correspondent, Colin Blaine.
Edinburgh is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, but it wasn't designed for the motor car. It's a place of steep hills and narrow streets, being steadily choked by traffic. Regional councillors have approved 2 radical ideas. They plan to remove traffic from one side of Princes Street, the city's main artery, and they've decided to create a car-free housing project in Gorgie, 2 miles from the city centre. David Begg is chairman of Lothian's Transport Committee.
The advantages are significant. It's cleaner, it's safer, it's cheaper. 30% of land in new housing estates goes towards catering for the car in terms of streets and garages and driveways. We want to turn that space into better amenity for residents.
The site selected is a disused railway goods yard, still waist-high in weeds, but it is close to shops and regular transport. It's thought the site could take about 100 houses, and a builder has expressed interest. If it receives final planning permission, the scheme could be ready in 2 years.
And the headlines again. As the IRA ceasefire enters its 2nd year, London and Dublin have confirmed that a summit meeting between John Major and the Irish Prime Minister John Bruton will take place next Wednesday. They're expected to agree that an international commission should oversee the removal of terrorists' weapons. NATO warplanes have attacked Bosnian Serb targets for a 2nd day. It's been reported that 5 European monitors who are thought to have died in Wednesday's raids have survived. BBC Radio News.
Radio 4. Now with the weather forecast and report,
here's Peter Cockcroft.
Hello again. A general look at the statistics reveal that we've just experienced the hottest and sunniest August on record. No surprises there, I suspect. However, taking the summer as a whole, and that's June, July and August, it's been only the third hottest and fifth sunniest since records began. Now the winds of change are blowing across the British Isles. North to northeasterly winds, in fact. They've brought cooler weather, and before the weekend's over, they will have brought most of us some rain. In the last 24 hours, they brought Margate in Kent 10 millimetres or 4/10 of an inch of rain. And so it was eastern England that saw a lot of cloud today. Scotland too. However, there was some sunshine in the west, 12.5 hours at Morecambe in Lancashire, and the sun in Falmouth in Cornwall lifted the temperature there to 25 Celsius, 77 Fahrenheit during Thursday. Much further north, it was a chilly 14 Celsius, 57 Fahrenheit at Sellerness in Shetland, and last night it was particularly chilly at Shap in Cumbria, where the temperature fell to just 8 Celsius, 46 Fahrenheit. Now tonight, southeast Britain will see a few more spots of rain early in the night, northwest Britain getting some rain nearer the dawn period. In between, it'll be a dry night, where there are prolonged breaks in the cloud. There'll be some mist and fog forming. The areas most at risk to thicker fog patches later in the night are going to be the West Midlands, East Wales, central and southern Scotland, plus Northern Ireland. And temperatures tonight across the British Isles hovering around about 10 degrees. Tomorrow, cloud will increase over Northern Ireland and Scotland through the day. A band of rain will slip down across from the northwest. There'll be some heavy rain over the Highlands, perhaps even the odd rumble of thunder. But as the rain moves further and further southeast, it'll become more showery in nature. Tomorrow's temperatures then across Northern Ireland and Scotland between 16 and 20 Celsius. Across England and Wales, the northerly breeze will mean a cool feel to Friday, especially on the east coast. After any morning fog clears, most places will have a dry day with some sunny spells. However, there'll be some cloud, and that'll be moving into the northwest, where it'll bring a little patchy rain later on in the day, perhaps into the evening there. Temperatures tomorrow will range between 18 on the east coast to around about 22 degrees on the south and west coasts of England and Wales. During Saturday, Friday's rain will slip down the eastern side of the country, and it looks as though the weather system bringing the rain is set to pep up a bit. To the north and west of the cloud and the rain, there'll be a mixture of sunshine and showers. On Sunday, the west will have the best of any sunshine, and a few showers there as well, but eastern Britain will have more in the way of cloud, and that's where there'll be some outbreaks of rain and strengthening northerly winds. By Monday, most of the first batch of rain will have died out, and the strong winds will have eased in the east before another rain area moves down across from the north. And as far as Tuesday's concerned, well, that unsettled theme will continue. And that's all from the BBC Weather Centre tonight. Good night.
Peter Cockcroft. Now, just before the shipping forecast, here's a reminder that from the early hours of Tuesday the 3rd of October, this shipping forecast will be moving on to a new regular time. We'll be broadcasting this forecast some 13 minutes later at midnight 45, while at 12:30 you'll be able to hear the first of a series of special late-night stories. So that's this midnight 33 shipping forecast, moving on to midnight 45 from the early hours of Tuesday the 3rd of October. Now here is the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office at 2343 on Thursday the 31st of August. There are warnings of gales in Finisterre. The general synopsis at 1900, high Northern Ireland 1029, expected West Seoul with little change by 1900 Friday. Low West Bailey 1015, expected Fair Isle 1017 by the same time. The area forecasts for the next 24 hours. Viking, variable 3 or 4, occasional drizzle, good becoming moderate with isolated fog patches. North at Sierra, south at Sierra, northerly 3 or 4, mainly fair, moderate with fog patches. Forties, northerly 3 or 4, mainly fair, moderate or good. Cromarty, 4th, time, variable 3 or 4, fair, moderate or good. Dogger, northerly 4 or 5, mainly fair, moderate or good. Fisher, German Bight, north or northeast 4 or 5, occasionally 6, rain later, moderate or good. Humber, Thames, Dover, northerly 4 or 5, mainly fair, moderate or good. White, Portland, Plymouth, northerly 3 or 4, fair, good. Biscay, northeasterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 in southwest. Fair, good. Trafalgar, variable 3 or 4. Showers, moderate or good. Finisterre, east or northeast 5 or 6, but 7 or gale 8 near Cape Finisterre, and variable 3 or 4 in south. Mainly fair, moderate or good. Sole, northeasterly 3 or 4, occasionally 5 in south. Drizzle in northwest later, good becoming moderate. Lundy, Fastnet, Irish Sea. Variable, mainly northeasterly 3, becoming northwesterly 3 or 4. Mainly fair, moderate or good. Shannon, variable, becoming northerly 3 or 4. Rain later, good becoming moderate. Rockall, southwesterly, veering northwesterly 4 or 5. Rain at first, moderate, becoming good. Malin, southerly, veering northwesterly 3 or 4, increasing 5 in west. Rain later, good becoming moderate. Hebrides, southwesterly, veering northwesterly 4 or 5. Rain at times, moderate, becoming good. Bailey, northwesterly, but southwesterly and east at first, 4 or 5. Rain then showers, good but moderate or poor in east at first. Fair Isle, southwesterly 3 or 4, veering northwesterly in west later. Occasional rain or drizzle, moderate or poor. Faroes, southwesterly 5, veering northwesterly 3 or 4. Occasional rain, moderate with fog patches, becoming good. Southeast Iceland, southwesterly 5, decreasing 3 or 4. Mainly fair, moderate with fog patches, becoming good. Now the weather reports from coastal stations for 2300 BST. Tiree, south 2, 27 miles, 1027, falling slowly. Stornoway, south by west 4. Intermittent slight drizzle, 7 miles, 1027, falling slowly. Sombra, southwest by south 2. Continuous slight drizzle, 2 miles, 1027, falling more slowly. Fiveness at 2200 BST, south-southeast 3, 11 miles, 1027, rising slowly. Bridlington, north-northwest 3, 11 miles, 1026, now falling. Dover, north-northwest 4, 1.5 miles, 1024, rising slowly. Greenwich light vessel automatic, north-northeast 5, more than 27 miles, 1025, rising slowly. Jersey, north-northwest 2, 7 miles, 1025, now falling. Channel light vessel automatic, northwest by west 3, 11 miles, 1025, rising slowly. Scilly automatic, northeast by north 3, 6 miles, 1027, rising slowly. Valencia, calm, 16 miles, 1028, now falling. Ronaldsway, calm, 27 miles, 1028, rising slowly. Malin Head, south-southeast 2, 27 miles, 1028, now falling. Now here's the weather forecast for the inshore waters of Great Britain and Northern Ireland until 1800, today, Friday the 1st of September. Anticyclone over Northern Ireland will move away steadily southwest as Atlantic frontal trough moves southeast into Scotland. From Berwick-upon-Tweed to the Wash, wind northerly 2 or 3, occasionally 4 in south, mainly fair, visibility mainly good. From the Wash to Dungeness, wind northeast backing northwest 3 or 4, occasionally 5 at first, mainly fair, visibility good. From Dungeness to the Isles of Scilly, wind variable, mainly northerly 3 or 4, fair, visibility good. From the Isles of Scilly to Holyhead, wind northeasterly backing northwesterly 3 or 4, mainly fair, visibility moderate or good. From Holyhead to Mull of Kintyre, including Carlingford Loch to Loch Foyle, wind variable 2 or 3, becoming westerly 4, occasional rain later, visibility good becoming moderate. From Mull of Kintyre to Cape Wrath, wind southwesterly 3 or 4, increasing 5 and veering northwesterly in the afternoon. Occasional rain, visibility good becoming moderate. From Cape Wrath to Wick, including the waters around Orkney and Shetland. Wind southwesterly, veering westerly, 3 or 4, occasionally 5. Occasional rain or drizzle, visibility moderate with fog patches. Finally, from Wick to Berwick-upon-Tweed, wind variable 2 or 3, mainly fair, visibility moderate or good. Now further weather reports from coastal stations for 2300 BST. Boomer, calm, 16 miles, 1028, falling slowly. Bridlington, north-northwest, 3, 11 miles, 1026, now falling. Walton-on-the-Naze, north by east, 2, 8 miles, 1025, falling more slowly. St Catherine's Point, calm, 16 miles, 1025, rising more slowly. Scilly Automatic, northeast by north, 3, 6 miles, 1027, rising slowly. Mumbles, north-northwest, 3, 7 miles, 1026, now falling. Valley, northeast by north, 2, 16 miles, 1027, now falling. Liverpool Crosby at 2200 BST, northeast by north, 2, 22 miles, 1028, rising slowly. Ronaldsway, calm, 27 miles, 1028, rising slowly. Larne at 2200 BST, calm, 11 miles. Machrihanish, calm, 19 miles, 1028, now falling. Greenock MRCC at 2200 BST, southwest, 1, 13 miles, 1028, rising slowly. Benbecula Automatic, south by east, 3, 1027, falling slowly. Stornoway, south by west, 4, intermittent slight drizzle, 7 miles, 1027, falling more slowly. Lerwick, south-southwest, 2, mist 1500 metres, 1027, steady. Wick Automatic, south by west, 1, 1027, rising slowly. Aberdeen, south by east, 2, 27 miles, 1028, rising slowly. And finally, Lucas, calm, 16 miles, 1028, rising slowly. And that's the end of the shipping bulletin. Well, we've reached that time again. It's fast approaching 1:45, and that means we've come to the end of the evening here on Radio 4. But if you're still up and about, after the national anthem, the BBC World Service takes over the airwaves, both on longwave and in stereo on FM. First on the menu is Sports Roundup. Radio 4 will be rubbing its eyes and hoping for a cup of tea at 5 to 6 when we get going once again. At 9:05, the castaway on Desert Island Discs is Linda LaPlante, the creator of much-admired television series like Prime Suspect and Civvies. She'll be talking to Sue Lawley about her life and work at 9:05 in the morning. But back to tonight, where it's definitely time to pull out the plug on Radio 4 and head for bed. Do join us in the morning if you can. In the meantime, from all of us still here at Broadcasting House in London, this is Jane Watson wishing you a very good night. Sleep well.
BBC World Service, this is Mike Costello with Sports Roundup. Hello, the headlines. Monica Seles wins again at the United States Open Tennis Championships. In football, a Brazilian club win the South American Championship, and 8 players share the lead after the first round of golf's European Masters.